Hi everyone, I'm Josh.
And I'm Jim, and this is the Dapper Meeple.
This show is about our love of gaming, the games we play, and the gaming community around this passion.
So grab some snacks, pull up a chair, and join us at the table with your monocle and bowler hat. Hey kids, remember, this is an adult podcast and may contain adult language.
Also, the Dapper Meeple outfit, not required.
Hey, we start this episode with some doom and gloom, discussing more info on the current tariff situation. But we're going to quickly pivot to the bright side of continued growth in the con scene.
In games we play, the bad karmas finally make their debut on our game table, with epic level gameplay, colorful and deadly heroes, and some tech-driven horror from the Zodiac.
And in our crowdfunding roundup, we're battling it out in a new card game with a tough name, jumping on the apocalypse survival train, and having some fun with magnets in a head-to-head dungeon adventure.
All this and more on this episode of the Dapper Meeple.
So here we are, and to quote the creators of the new card game, Goodknack, the world is dying and nobody is handling it particularly well. We'll talk more about them in the Kickstarter roundup, but it just felt like an appropriate opening to just where we are.
Welcome to 2025. You thought 2020 was bad. Well, buckle up.
It just feels like every year after 2020, it just adds one more raccoon into the trench coat. And it's just 5 2020s in a trench coat.
Just five 2020s in a trench coat. That's the way I think I'm going to start describing a lot of things now. It's just a bunch of shit in a trench coat. That's it. Last episode, though, we did do a little quick discussion about tariffs and what that looks like. There was actually a really great article that came out on Board Game Wire that he interviewed a lot of different publishers, and they had a lot of things to say about tariffs. So we wanted to follow up on that from last week or last episode to touch on it again and just bring some of that out, talk about how some of the publishers are actually looking at the tariffs, what are some of the real world effects that are happening because of that, and then what that means for you and your wallet going forward.
And just as a side note, this article came out on March 6th, so the worst birthday present ever. Thanks, Mike Didymus.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, buddy.
To start with, what kind of brought this whole idea around, we, of course, backed Unmatched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yes.
Which is the second Unmatched Adventures version coming out. We're super excited about it. It looks really cool being a fan of the Turtles. If you did not get a chance to back it, you should probably look at picking it up because Unmatched Adventures was one of the best co-op games that came out recently, I think.
Right. Yeah. First of all, they have such a good base to start with, and they got so many great IPs in there, and they all work with the Unmatched Adventures, so that's great. And we do love Ninja Turtles ever since Josh ruined my opportunity to see them in theaters for the live action. It's got a special place in our hearts.
Yeah, if you haven't heard that, welcome to the show. We just discussed past trauma here. So anyway, the Restoration Games sent out a message, an update on the Unmatched Ninja Turtles Kickstarter that had a quick discussion about the tariffs. Obviously, they are feeling them since the game is in production and is slated to be shipped, I think, later this year. Mm-hmm. And part of the message they put out was, hey, this is going to cost us a lot more money, but they are going to eat the cost of the tariffs provided as they are right now. So currently, if you are not up to news, currently imports from China are facing a 20% blanket tariff. So given where that is right now, they said that Restoration Games will cover the backer's cost on that, which I think is a really awesome move for them because I know obviously that's not something you plan for when you first do your projects and crowdfunding, but here we are.
And that was something in this article that we read today they really talked about is there's no way to plan for this. Who could have had any idea that this was going to happen? Originally, it was a 10% tariff, and we'll talk about probably a little here that a lot of the game manufacturers are like, all right, we can eat that.
Yeah.
But when you start getting into a 20% tariff, like I think it's a noble move to be like, look, you backed it for this. This is what you promised. This is what you're getting, and we're going to eat the cost of that. They did also say, though, that the retail version is probably going to be more expensive now.
Yeah.
To make up for all of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there was a crowdfunding campaign that the campaign was actually last year. It was by Tetix Games. The guy's name is Judson Cowan. It actually shipped before the tariffs went into effect from China. But by the time it is going to hit the States, it will have gone from no tariff to a 20% tariff, which he estimates is going to cost his small company around $25,000 for the shipped copies.
So that's $25,000 extra that they have to pay on top of it, which we've talked about before. The board game industry has some pretty narrow margins.
Yeah.
So just dropping another $25,000 that's significant to an industry that has to have these margins for it to be just to be sustainable. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there were a bunch of other different people who chimed in on this article. Everyone from like Jamie Stegmaier from Stonemaier Games to even the operations director from Leader Games, just about different ways that they are looking at the tariffs. Jamie actually put out a really awesome blog post back in December before all of this even happened, a speculative what this would look like if tariffs happen, what some of the options were. And while from the couch co-op perspective, you can say, hey, just raise the MSRP $5-10, do what you need to do to cover the cost just to get the games out there, keep that kind of production going. But they actually talk in the article about how that creates issues for what happens when those tariffs suddenly go away. Because I think the biggest issue that everyone is talking about is the volatility of these tariffs.
Yes.
Because it's even a couple of them state in there that the U.S. Customs website can't even update fast enough to keep track of the changes that are happening to these tariffs.
Because they're happening on a whim. They're being put in place by people that have no understanding of what it takes to run an economy. And there's a huge misunderstanding on what a tariff is that is still being repeated over and over again. This goes into, no, here is the actual where the rubber meets the road. This is what happens to any sort of business that is bringing product in from a country where a tariff has been placed.
Yeah, and I did see a comment on, actually it was on Jamie's blog post where somebody had commented that won't this just drive manufacturing back to the U.S.? But I think it's important to note, and obviously I'm not a guru on these things. By all means, take what I say as a grain of salt. But with these sort of things, the U.S. right now is not built to manufacture things, especially board game components, like China is. And the cost of doing them in the United States far outweighs the cost of doing them in a foreign country because of the different labor laws and things like we have here. It doesn't make a feasible sense for the United States to manufacture every single thing that, especially in the board game industry, that a company would need.
Geez, it's a multi-billion-dollar a year industry. There are thousands of games on the table out there, and there are so many components that are just not the same. You're talking about manufacturing these individual pieces for multiple games, for multiple publishers. That's huge. And the money has been spent in China and some in Europe.
Yeah.
To, one, get the machines to do that, the actual production, and two, to train the people that are going to be operating that.
Yeah.
It's not like if anybody has the impression that you can just wander into a game manufacturing plant and put one together yourself, you have a serious misunderstanding on what it takes to actually physically make this game.
Yeah. And the infrastructure is just not here.
No.
Either. And that's another part. And you can go across the industries as far as parts and things that are manufactured overseas and then shipped in, even things that are done for like final assembly here. We just don't have the infrastructure. And a lot of times, honestly, the manpower to be able to have all these individual manufacturing plants here. Like it's just not the way we're set up. Now, could it go to that one day? Maybe, but you're talking about a decades-long process that would have to happen in order for that to make its way back here for us to manufacture everything we possibly use.
How long has that money and that innovation been going on in China and in Europe for these manufacturing plants? Like, I think a decade is a conservative estimate.
Sure.
And the problem that we deal with after that, and somebody talks about too, that, right now, if the prices of games go up, like they're probably not coming back down.
Like many things, it's very difficult usually to drive prices back down. They go up for whatever reasons that you want to put there, but that's just kind of the way things are. So what does that look like for you, our listeners here? Honestly, I don't think we could say. Outside of the short term, if you have Kickstarter projects you've backed that have not delivered yet, you're probably going to be looking at an increase in shipping fees. I would not be surprised, especially smaller companies.
Yeah.
They may not be able to eat like additional fees are. If tariffs continue to go up, some people are tossing out numbers up to 60 to 100% retaliatory tariffs on China. So if that happens, then that's going to be really difficult. Now, there is a sort of silver lining, because last time we had this presidency, there were tariffs that went out, but there was a exception for game and toy manufacturing.
Yeah. Yep.
So if that does get re-implemented, everything will be at least good to go on that front. So we can hope for something like that, but there hasn't been any mention of anything like that this time. So again, I think the big issue here is volatility and how things can change on a whim. And that makes it difficult for businesses to do any kind of long-term planning. And that's really what they thrive on. Justin Cowan, the person we mentioned earlier, quote out of the article that he said, which I thought was really hits the nail on the head with this. He says, "I expect this to permanently increase the cost of board games in the U.S., even if tariffs are removed, since the unpredictability of the current political decision-making means tariffs could suddenly reappear with no warning, leaving businesses unable to plan or to cover their costs."
That volatility in the long-term planning is probably another big reason why, if somebody did want to, like, all right, I will just start manufacturing here. One, the time and money that it takes to set that up and get good at it. But two, you spend 3 or 4 years building this, and then the tariffs end, and then you have to charge significantly more to make board games. You're going to lose, that whole business is going down.
Yeah, which Jamie actually mentions in his blog post that even a 40% tariff is not enough to justify driving business back. Like it's not worth it. That tariff would have to be higher than that to even get there.
Yeah.
Again, what we can expect this year, I would imagine we're probably going to see less ambitious Kickstarters. Probably companies are going to dial back offerings depending on how long this lasts. While they may start looking towards Europe for more manufacturing, the threat of tariffs on the European Union is right around the corner as well, because by the time you invest all the time and energy and money into moving over to try and get there, that doesn't seem like a great business idea either. I imagine we're going to see some sort of scaling back on new projects. There may be some additional like reprints and things like that come out, but I wouldn't be surprised, at least in the Q1, Q2 of this year, for people to be pumping the brakes and seeing how things go.
And then manufacturers are going to have to make their decision from that. And there was some talk of some of the manufacturers probably going to more of a direct sell model.
Yeah.
Just because your profit margins are better that way.
Sure.
Just to have to make up for it. We talk all the time about supporting the stuff you love. So if you have games out there that you want, and publishers, especially the smaller publishers that are putting out games, we always encourage you to go support, even if you're backing at the tier that doesn't have the metal coins, it may hurt, but it'll help.
Yeah. And speaking of direct selling, that takes us into our next topic for the opening about conventions are still something that are growing even this year. So when we talk direct selling, obviously conventions are a huge part of that, because you get access to your customer directly instead of having to go through retailers or distributors or whatnot. And we just actually are wrapping up Gamma just a few weeks ago in Louisville, Kentucky, and it posted record attendance. Now, Gamma is a convention that's mainly a trade show, so it's more geared towards your board game publishers, manufacturers, retail stores, that sort of thing. So it's less into the public, but if we go off of looking at PAX Unplugged from the end of last year, estimated somewhere around 25 to 30,000 people were there, which is an increased attendance for them. So I think there's still that desire to be at these shows, to interact with publishers, to be able to get the games that you want, that sort of thing. I think Gen Con will be a big tell this year.
I think, yeah, to see what the numbers look like coming out of them with distributors and as well as attendees.
Yeah, I can say the housing lottery was as messed up as ever this year.
Dude, Gen Con's housing lottery is garbage every time. I have never heard anybody have a good thing to say about the Gen Con lottery ever. Between that and the lottery to get tickets for stuff, it just, Gen Con, come on, guys. Like, you're hurting me.
Yeah, if that's any indication, we're probably looking at the same things last year, but who knows, we'll see. For right now, though, it looks pretty good. It looks like people are still wanting to go to conventions. People are still wanting to get together. I think that is a solid thing for board game manufacturers, especially looking to transition to a more direct model.
Yeah.
Because talking with Sam and them, especially smaller publishers, if they have a good Gen Con or PAX or whatever convention they're able to go to, like, it makes their year.
Yeah, yeah.
And even outside of board gaming, talking with our friends from Fire and Ash, they had a huge success at PAX Unplugged this past year.
Oh, yeah. Talking to Rose, she told us just how great everything was going. She was like, hey, these are the biggest conventions that I've had when it comes to orders and what we're going to be fulfilling. And we were like, hey, we'd like to order some stuff. She's like, cool, give me 2 months.
Yeah.
So, which we were cool with.
Yeah. So it's awesome to see these smaller publishers and smaller companies actually be able to do well at these conventions. So look forward to this year. Look forward to the conventions. I know we have next one up, I think, is Origins in June.
Yeah.
So that'll be the first litmus test, I think, as we really dig into our convention season.
And Origins is a smaller convention traditionally.
Yeah.
Everything's smaller than PAX U and Gen Con. So those are the top two.
I think last year they did break attendance numbers, but I think they put up, it was almost 18,000.
Yeah.
Is what their attendance numbers were,
yeah.
Which is still not bad. It's bigger than your local con. I think they're probably number 3 in the States.
Okay. Yeah.
So still pretty good. We'll see what they end up coming out with after June, and that'll give us a better idea. Hopefully things haven't completely burned to the ground by then, but hey, we'll see.
Yeah. Speaking of local conventions, we've talked about it a lot. We're incredibly excited to have been given a spot on Artist Alley at our local Tidewater Comicon, which has been a convention that is growing every year.
Yep.
It has consistently had higher and higher attendance. It's here in Virginia Beach, in the Virginia Beach Convention Center, which is really cool. It's down by the Vibe District and the actual beachfront.
Yep.
The part of Virginia Beach that makes it a tourist attraction.
Yeah.
For people to come here. For 3 years now, we've been like, hey, man, we got this local podcast. Can we come to the convention? And they said no. They said, yeah, sure. Buy a pass. So
to be fair, we still had to pay for the table on Artist Alley. At least they gave us a spot.
We got the opportunity. That's what they were providing.
No, we're really excited to be there. If you are local to the area or semi-local to Hampton Roads, definitely invite you to come on down, even if it's just for one day. I think it just runs on Saturday and Sunday.
Yep, it's just a 2-day con.
Yep. So if you can make it out, there's all kinds of really cool local artists and crafters and stuff like that make stuff there. Of course, we get representation from our local game stores as well.
Yep.
They always set up booths. There's usually a really cool cosplay scene as well. So a lot of cool stuff to just come down and see. You can pick up tickets online or you can pay at the door. I think you get a discount if you get them online.
You do, yeah, if you buy them early.
But yeah, definitely swing by and say hey if you happen to come out one of the 2 days.
It's also, we have a lot of guests that show up like most cons do. Yep. This year, I am really excited. I'm going to go get an autograph from Alan Tudyk.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
We missed last year because of planning and scheduling and life, which kind of sucks. But I believe Jay Muse was there last year. There's all sorts of artists and voice actors that show up for this that, even if you don't know their face, you know their work. So, yeah, it's a good time. Come down for a day, get a pass. And if you make it over to Artist Alley, we'll probably ask you to record for the podcast or something. So we're working the engagement angle. So we will let you guys know. And next up on Games We Play, The Bad Karmas and the Curse of the Zodiac. Designed by Davide Garofalo and Ricardo Landi, with artwork from Andrew Baxter, Hamish Fraser, and Daniel J. Walsh. Published by Explored. When ancient demigods awaken from their slumber to reshape the world and extinguish human civilization, who are you going to call? In the case of the Bad Karmas, it's 4 predestined and completely unsuspecting heroes who awaken their inner superpowers and are convinced that they're the chosen by the astrologist Gil. In this dynamic, tactical boss battler, you choose to play as one of the 4 original Bad Karmas, or you can choose from 16 other unique and colorful characters. Your mission? Put a stop to the raging beasts known as the Zodiacs, 12 powerful demigods set on ending you and all 8 million of your friends on planet Earth. Designed and played on the Teburu system, each boss presents new challenges, and you'll have to learn how to take them down with your chosen team of heroes. Each hero also has their own abilities, roles, and special talents that you need to make the best of for an effective team. The only way to learn is by playing, and playing means that you're going to be challenged by an AI-driven opponent that knows where you are, when you're a threat, and reacts in real time. The objective is simple. Don't get knocked out, and bring down the Zodiacs one by one. We have been waiting for this game for a couple of years now. We originally saw the Bad Karmas when it was first being introduced along with the Teburu system in one of our first episodes. I think it was like within the first 10 episodes. And I remember us saying about it that, hey, I hope this doesn't turn out to be a gimmick because what they're doing looks really cool.
Yeah. I think that was when the first Kickstarter came through.
It might have been.
Yeah, because we didn't actually see it until our first Gen Con.
Yeah.
But we had just started the show and we were like, yeah, we'll do our, at that time, Kickstarter roundup. And we were looking through Kickstarters and we saw that one and we're like, oh, this looks really cool. I hope it works.
So, good Lord, 4 years later, and obviously a lot of time and money on the part of the guys that are doing the Teburu.
Yep.
They have 2 games that are on it. They have an expansion to the first game, or 2 expansions technically, and they have another dungeon crawler scheduled to start later this year.
Yep.
They're making progress.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know and maybe haven't listened to the show, the Teburu system is like a board that slides underneath the game board that tracks movements of pieces on the game board.
Right.
Through specific little bases that are on the miniatures or on the boss in the case of the Bad Karmas. And through sensors in the Teburu board, it actually feeds that information into an app, which depending on which game you're playing, then it allows the game to be affected based on how your movements go.
And we're going to talk about the Bad Karmas as a game, as a boss battler. But before we get into that, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the Teburu and with our experience after we have finally gotten our hands on it. The other games that they have done or are going to do, one was Vampire the Masquerade, Rise of Milan, which that is a pretty significant IP.
Yeah, definitely. And the game itself is an area control game, which I think is very interesting, the way that there's an implementation on that. And then, of course, you mentioned their newest project that they really just started talking about at Gamma this past weekend, which is a sword and sorcery. It's going to be a dungeon crawler that uses the Tebrus.
We have talked to them in conventions since then, and they have talked about some bigger IPs and some bigger companies partnering with them to make games especially designed for the system. They've talked about making a lot of it open source so that small game designers, if they want to design a game to use on the Teburu system, they can. So hopefully some of that really comes to fruition this year. So we're going to talk the Bad Karmas, but before we do that, we're going to talk a little bit about the Teburu. So like Josh said, it's basically a mat that folds out. It's got some electronics on one end, right? There's the kind of like the control board that you pop on and off. It's magnetic, sits on one end. You load the program on the app, and there's a couple different ways that you can do it. So they set it up where you can do it with a single device, right? So everybody controls their character, and it controls everything else from that single device, or you could do multiple devices, which is the way that I think they intended for it.
Yeah.
and that's the fun way. So we use a Surface tablet for the master device, and then everybody just uses their phone, runs the app, registers to it, and that puts you in the game. You choose your characters. All of the characters have an RFID in the base. So you tap them onto the control unit and it registers them as it tells you to do it. So it knows who you are and how it's controlling. There are dice that you have to charge because they are electronic. And when you roll them, the Teburu knows what you rolled.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, when it comes to reviews from like 2022, were lukewarm about this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll be honest, when we first played it at Gen Con, let's see, that would have been 23. It was still, there were some connectivity issues that were there. First, let's be fully transparent. So we bought this on GameFound, and when we received our copy of the games, it did not have a Teburu system in it, even though we had ordered one. Again, just full transparency. So that happened first. After reaching out to them, after we unboxed everything just to make sure we didn't lose it somewhere, we had a brand new Teburu board at our house within a week and a half at most.
I think it was like 5 days when the box got here because I wasn't even expecting it yet.
Yeah, they were extremely quick to turn around and make it right, which is fantastic. So I just wanted to plug that in there just for transparency so everyone knows where we're coming from. So that was a definite plus to them. But as we started to mess with it, everything was not sunshine and rainbows.
Right. I feel like still you have to be a little tech savvy to work through that initial setup.
Yeah. So you would hope that it would work straight out of the box, like just as it should, but there is a little bit, and of course, it may be a problem with the general Wi-Fi here in the house because sometimes the Wi-Fi here is a little wonky, probably because there's so many people here and so many devices. But we found one of the best ways to get it to work was to actually generate a hotspot from the Surface that we use.
So the master device was
and then everyone connected that hotspot. And that pretty much eliminated the connectivity issues for us.
That solved that problem really quickly. And it's important to note, too, that the design of this and the connectivity with all of the extra devices is a Wi-Fi connection. It's not a Bluetooth connection.
Yeah.
And again, that was done intentionally by them as well, because there is the capability for you to play a game simultaneously with somebody else that has another Teburu system. And they played a game. One group was in Italy and one group was in Canada.
Yeah.
And it was able to link together and they're seeing the same thing. They're making the same plays.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a cool feature. Is anybody ever going to use it?
Yeah. As this technology continues to develop, right, and they begin to add more titles and things like that to it, I'm excited for the possibilities there because especially when we start, if you're able to lean into something like a TTRPG, to be able to have that connectivity instead of just looking at a virtual tabletop, something like that, I think the possibilities are out there are really cool. That being said, at first we did have connectivity issues. It did take a little bit of setup to get everything working. But now, like after we work through those things, and I don't want to make it sound like it was crazy or anything, but it was probably an hour and a half for us we would connect, we'd start to play a game, things would disconnect, and then we'd have to restart the game, at least in the beginning. Now that we figured out that kind of backdoor connectivity through generating the hotspot, even if we disconnect for whatever reason, we're connecting right back in. So everything seems to be really working smooth in that regards.
Yes, which was great because it was frustrating at first. And I was really... disappointed is not the right word, but it was a whole lot of, I hope we figure out how to do this better.
Yeah.
And it has. We've probably played 5-6 games, 7 games on
that.
Our rounds on it, playing the bad karmas, and they've gone well. They've gone smooth.
Yeah. And we'll talk about how the bad karmas plays and what that looks like. But as far as connectivity with the dice, with the board, all of that sort of stuff, even with the base on the larger boss, like all that stuff seems to be working really well. We're just using our cell phones as like the controller devices. We're talking about maybe picking up some just Wi-Fi, like small Wi-Fi devices to do that can just be dedicated solely. But yeah, so far, I'm really impressed with the system. I'm glad it works.
Yes.
That's the baseline for me was like, I hope it works. But I think it not only just works, I think it works really well.
I think so, yeah. Like a little bit as we talk about the game, I think it's important to understand like what this is and what this isn't. I don't think that this is the same thing as an app-driven game, if that's what you're picturing right now. I feel like it is a next step on that road where we've played a lot of app-driven games, which we have really enjoyed.
That's kind of, I think, my baseline comparison when it comes to app-driven is that Journeys in Middle-earth.
Yeah.
Which, don't get me wrong, is a fantastic game. I can only imagine how much better that game would be with the implementation of what the Teburu does.
Exactly, yeah.
Because one of the biggest drawbacks, I think, with app-driven games are the fact you have to manually input so much information into the app and there's no variation on what the app does then necessarily with that information. It's all a pre-written program usually that just does its thing. There are oftentimes, specifically you look at Journeys in Middle-earth, there are times where it talks about when the app tells you a certain enemy moves a certain way, you have to decide, can that actually happen? Whereas in the case of Bad Karmas, the app already knows what the board looks like. And it uses that information to then make decisions about what it will do and what the boss will do and all that sort of stuff. So there is no inputting information, right? You're not rolling dice and then having to type in what you put in. You just roll the dice and the app knows what you rolled. And that's the kind of like that next step, like you were talking about, that I think elevates this to something more. Now, one of the biggest drawbacks with app-driven games, it talks about longevity, right? What happens when the app stops being supported by the developer, and are you going to be able to get this in the future? All that sort of stuff. I think this still has those same questions of what that looks like. At least in the meantime, everything is downloaded locally. So once you get the download, it doesn't need access to Wi-Fi other than connectivity.
Right.
So you're not accessing the internet for any new information or anything like that once you download the initial client. So everything is all local. It doesn't, I think that kind of helps with that too.
And like you said, you're not really putting in information. The game board already knows because of the RFID and the connectivity and stuff. And what I think it really allows you to do is that I heard somebody say you can't accidentally cheat.
Yeah.
If you have 2 movement, you're going to make 2 movement. And if you go somewhere you're not allowed to, because maybe you forget the rule that if you get near the boss, your movement stops. Yeah. It will stop you and tell you that it's an illegal move, and you go back. So I really like that. When you have your list of abilities that you can do, it tells you what you can do right there. It shows you whether you're in range or not, and it'll show you why you can't do it.
Yeah, as you move, I do like how the different actions light up when they're available.
Yeah.
And it knows because of the different tracking that it does and things like that. So.
Yeah. So with that kind of a basic understanding of the Teburu system itself, let's talk the Bad Karmas.
Yeah, so this is probably the first big like boss battler that we've done. Unmatched Adventures came after we first saw this one.
Yeah.
Which is very good. We've already mentioned that this episode. By all means, you should check out that. Fighting the Mothman is fantastic. But this was the first one that we got a taste of when we tried it out. And I like this genre because I'm a fan of co-op games. But I think this game specifically paired with the Teburu, it just sings.
Yeah, it does.
It's really good.
Yeah. So let's talk about the game. So what's really cool about it is when you log into the app, you can pick as a skirmish game where you just pick one of the bosses that you have and go fight them. There's a couple different modes. There's also events that we saw. We haven't really dug into those yet, but it looks like just like in video games, and hey, this event is going on until, this date. So that kind of thing pops up too. And then there's the campaign mode, which is basically just like it sounds. You build a group of heroes and you just keep fighting bosses as long as you can, which is really cool. And in the campaign mode, they start to lay the story out for you on what exactly is going on.
Yeah. So in Bad Karmas, you are a ragtag group of people. If you play the campaign, they recommend you playing as the original 4 characters, but there's currently 20 different characters you can choose from.
That's right.
So there are some options, but the story itself really follows the 4 like main characters. It references them all the time, but you can really play with whoever you want. But the story goes that these random people came into the shop one day and grabbed these ancient artifacts that happen to be weapons. They've gained superpowers and are tasked with taking down these monstrous creatures that each represent one of the zodiac signs.
And the lovable narrator and I guess group mascot, Gil, is the one that kind of walks you through it. And Gil's a guy I'd hang out with. I'm not even, yeah. He seems like a cool dude, runs a pawn shop, runs around in Hawaiian shirts, stuff like that. He has a van.
Yeah. Gil the astrologer.
Gil the astrologer, yeah. The prophet.
Yeah.
It's just a fun little quirk that they put in there. And I really enjoyed sitting through the cinematics, a rough word, but the storytelling part in between there.
It gives you a little bit of meat to just this, like, fighting these different monsters. And speaking of the monsters, so there's 12 different ones.
Yep.
One for each sign of the zodiac, and they are all completely different.
Yes.
And I think that right there is probably one of the coolest things that I've seen. Everything from the map you fight them on, the terrain pieces that come with them, the whole 9 yards. Each one is different. The way they attack, the way they move, all that sort of stuff. So I've had the opportunity to play against 3. I don't know if you played another one.
No, I played 3. But we played a couple of them back to back.
Okay.
Because we got our ass handed to us. So.
Yeah, which we'll get to difficulty in a little bit. But yeah, and each one has been unique. And to me, I think that really adds to the fun kind of replayability of this game is the way that they are so different.
Yes.
And especially when you're playing through the campaign, like you don't want to be fighting the same thing. It's not just a giant bullet sponge with a bunch of hit points. Like it acts differently. You use the terrain differently. It requires you to activate or do certain things. And one thing I will say about that is the game isn't 100% forthcoming of the best way to beat the bosses.
The game's not even forthcoming in what the bosses can do until they pick you up and fling you across the board. Like you don't know what the bosses do, which if you were a bunch of goobers that picked up magical weapons and ran in to kill kaiju level stuff, you don't know what you're doing. You figured this out as we go.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it too. The way that the bosses work, I think, is really one of the features that I enjoy. There is a round base that has lights on 4 sides of it that you fit the monster miniature into. They're chunky, right? Really great detail on them. Like you see where they're the name or where they represent that zodiac.
Yeah.
Right? So you connect that, and then as you start to play, your heroes have abilities, and the sides of the base will change colors based on its current status. If there's no light on, it's just considered stable. It's regular. You can hit it, whatever. If it's yellow, there are certain abilities that affect that side, like the shove attack.
Yeah.
Which we found out was way more useful than we thought it was.
Yeah. But you can only shove on a side that is yellow. And then, of course, you have the armored side, which is like, just a white light, which means your attacks, unless they say they won't do any damage, but you will break that armor. And then, of course, everyone's favorite is the critical side, which is when it turns red.
But it's important to note that your character has to have an ability that will activate on that critical side. It'll be listed on your ability to get that double damage.
Yeah.
So you just can't hit it because it's red. And a lot of times, as soon as you hit one of those sides, it'll stabilize. So that effect is gone. But there are things that you can do to the boss. Is it dazing the boss?
Yeah, you can daze it to keep it from taking reactions, or you can make it vulnerable, which will keep those sides from becoming stable once they're hit.
But that ring, it brings up the level of strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. Which again, I think some boss battlers suffer from because they're just there.
Yeah.
This forces you to think about positioning, and not only that, but how your attacks will affect the boss for the following turns.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that's done really well. And it's little things too. So let's say the boss is not dazed and can take reactions. If another player moves up to the boss, will do something.
Yes.
Whether it's just turn to look at that player, or in the case of the last one we played, which was Taurus, he actually hits you and knocks you back away from him if you run up.
Yeah.
So all of these things, like they add to the little bit of complexity where this is just a little bit harder than like your traditional boss battler. There's a little bit more going on to it, but a lot of that is all made possible by this system.
The board that you're playing on, if you look at the master device, you see the setup of the board, and there will be terrain pieces that move or explode or come in. So you can always check on the board to see where things are supposed to be like that, because not everything is tracked. Even the boss is not tracked, but he will show you where to put him and, more importantly, where to face him.
Yeah.
Because we messed that up the other night, and we made an attack, and we had him facing the wrong way, so we didn't get the credit for hitting that side.
Yeah.
But it knows where the boss should be.
Yes.
And how, so when you attack a side, it knows what side you're going after. The heroes themselves all have, like I said, an RFID chip in them. So it knows exactly who the hero is and where they are on the map.
Yeah, which leads to the next part of the boss combat, which the boss will make decisions based on where the players are.
Yes.
Which is wild. First off, it brings in a challenge level, or maybe even the ability for a much higher challenge level.
Yes. Yeah.
Because there were times, so we'll talk Ares specifically, because that dude's kind of a dick. But one of his big attacks is he'll pick up one of the characters, hit every other character around, and then throw that character.
Yes, it's known as the living mace.
And there were times where we would be away from him, but we may be grouped up at like another place on the map, and he would move to the middle of our little group, pick up one of us, swing us around, hit everybody, and then throw that person. So that little bit of an AI element to it really ups the difficulty and increases that kind of overall playability, because every time we played, it's been different.
We've played it with different heroes, and he seems to respond differently to those. And we'll talk heroes in a minute, because apparently that selection is important. I did feel like there were a couple of times too, and it may have just been me because I was sensitive about it, that there were times where the boss would zero in on a particular character.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it depends on, one, how much damage you're doing and things like that. But it's such a engaging concept, the way that it works. And again, after we fix connectivity issues and all that, everything just works so cleanly.
Yes.
Right? The dice and everything, it'll tell you, shake the dice, and it'll tell you when to roll it. You roll it, and it'll read the number. All of that just works. So each hero has about 6 abilities that they can do, and they range from attacks to buffing to destabilizing the boss to movement abilities, like all kinds of stuff, depending on your hero, that they can do. And the heroes do feel very different.
I have not played or seen heroes played that do the same thing.
Yeah.
Like you have heroes that are support heroes and whatnot, or they may be labeled as versatile in support, but they always play very differently.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think to their credit, that's one thing that was done really well. But because everything is tracked, your abilities will have ranges on them, right? Relay 1, 2, some 3, that sort of thing. And what I like in your player interface, as you're deciding what ability you want to use, when you move your character, it'll tell you if you can use the ability, it'll light up.
Yeah.
And you can click on it and use it. If it doesn't, it'll be kind of grayed out, and will show you a symbol of why.
Yes.
Like most of the time it's going to be rain is why you can't. But there is like a confusion effect that if you're confused, some of your abilities will lock behind that and you won't be able to use those. That right there is just so clean, because there's no, man, I need to check the rules and see if I can use this ability, or what's that rule again about how far I have to be.
Yep.
And you mentioned it earlier about the movement aspect of it, where if you do a move that is not possible, the game will tell you that's not a possible move.
Yep.
So it really clears up a lot of those kind of, not really niche rules, but the little things that I think take up in especially map games or dudes on a map.
Yeah.
Those questions that you'll have about whether or not you can do those things, you're not digging in a rule book or anything. It's all just right there.
Which is really good, because there is no rule book.
Yeah.
So that is another part of this. And it was part of the design, talking to the guys that created this, is no, this is supposed to be you're going into it and you have to learn, not only learn the boss, but learn your character as well, right? Yeah. And like you said, there's certain things, like everyone does something different. I've been playing with the Shield Maiden, and I really like her. She is up in your face. She's got a shield, like they didn't bury anything in the name. But she has an ability that when she takes damage, she has this counterattack ability to come up. That counterattack ability is used when she uses her other abilities. If you have counterattack, you get bonuses to them. Like you may get some protection, or you may hit harder, or something like that. You can still use the abilities without it, but it empowers your attack. So that theme that I found with her, that's, you want to be taking damage just so you can be able to use that. And that one's really cool. But all of them have their own thing that you got to figure out how to make that work.
The first time you play with a character, some of them are more on the nose.
Sure.
Like some of them are easier to identify the best and most ideal way to play them.
Yeah.
But then there are others like that one that takes a little bit of learning. And I think another piece of that is also unique is every round, not only do you get to choose the order the heroes go, but you get to choose what is called a stance, right? So there are 4 different stances that you can choose. They line up with the elements. So earth, fire, water, and air. And they all do different things. Like they'll keep you from being like slowed or confused or frightened or something, like depending on the stance. Right. And then they also will give you like a buff. Yeah. So like water stance allows you to try and dodge a single attack, or like air will allow you to move further.
One more space. Yeah.
Yeah. So each round you can game plan with the other people who you're playing with and decide, all right, so this is what I want to do. So I'm going to go in this stance, or I don't want him to throw me, so I'm going to go in earth stance so I can't be moved. So I like that element too, because it adds, again, just that kind of one more level of complexity. Yep. That's just a little bit more difficult. It's nothing crazy, but the strategy element that adds is really good. And when you're talking about the characters and their abilities, the abilities also have cooldowns on them.
Yes. Yep. Again, adds more planning into that. And there's actually, one of the bonuses for the fire stance is whatever ability you use in that round, the cooldown is automatically reduced by 1.
Yeah.
So again, there's just so much that you plan going into something.
Yeah, and every character has an ability that is always available. And it's an ability that gives you a focus usually, and then something else. And focus in this game, whatever that number is, and however many stacks of that you have, that adds to every die roll you make, which is just, it's a really good ability. So everyone always has that. There's no cooldown on that. You can use it every round if you wanted to. But yeah, so that I like that that's built in as well. So you're never stuck where you don't have anything you can do. But yeah, so overall with that, I love the way everything has been implemented into it. And with the complexity, with the strategy elements, we can talk about difficulty.
Yeah. I think a lot of it, as we went into this, so there's 4 levels of difficulty. So when you start setting up your game or your campaign or however you want to do it, it asks you, do you want to go easy, normal, hard, or suicide or something? I don't know. We didn't even look at that end yet. And basically what it does is it determines how many hit points the boss is going to have, how reactive they're going to be, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we played it on normal because it's like, all right, we can go middle of the road. Mama didn't raise a bitch. We get this. We got to go easy. So we did, and we got stomped the first time. But because a lot of it was learning which attacks to use when, which stances to use when, how is this boss going to hurt us this time?
Yeah, and as we play it, like you really see that element come through. And that's what they wanted, and I don't disagree with that, because there isn't really a penalty for losing, like in the campaign specifically. You just replay the scenario. So I think one of my favorite moments so far is it was either the first or second time we were playing Ares. We were down to the last person, and it was my character, and he picked me up and he threw me across the room. But the spot that I landed on was next to one of the pillars, like one of the pieces on the board. And apparently there was a rocket launcher that was hidden there, and it pops up on your screen as like an additional action. Yep. Like you can pick it up, or it gives you a little voice line on the main board. It says, hey, you see something shiny, or the sun reflects off something shiny in the rocks, and you get this action to pick up this rocket launcher and then use it. And it's little things like that that now, like every time we play, we're like, all right, what are we going to find on the map now? And I just like that stuff's in there because there's no indication on the map. There's no indication from the app that's there except for when you're standing on that spot. Then you get the play out. So
I think that's the third part of this for me, right? What the boss can do, what the Zodiac can do is really cool, and understanding that's important. What your heroes can do and their abilities is really important as well. But also, we talked about each of these bosses has a different map that they play on, and you put the maps out and they look good. They're a flat map and they got the circles so you know where to move and stuff like that. But the pictures on the map mean something.
Yeah.
For Ares, you're fighting him in a cave, and they come with cardboard punch out, right? Like terrain for sure. And each one has its own stuff.
Yeah.
So you put those down and they can be moved. The map will tell you when you need to move them and stuff. But in his cave particularly, there's one spot or two spots where you see it looks like a beam of light coming into the cave. And if Ares steps into those,
he gets dazed.
So he can't take, like, he's blinded by the light.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know in the Taurus game, so the map is split where part of it is like a cave and then part of it is like outside. And if you step into his cave, he takes a reaction to come attack you.
Yeah, like he's guarding that cave.
Yeah, and we don't want to spoil too much as far as what you have to do for any of those who may get this game later. But yeah, like those kind of things where the map actually matters, that's really cool.
The map and the terrain pieces too. We learned that used a shove attack at one point and pushed him up against one of those big pillars, and it crumbled. Yeah. And it stunned him because rocks fell on his head.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh.
Yeah.
That's what I've really enjoyed are the eureka moments that we've had in playing it.
Yeah. And it comes from our interactions with the boss as well. But there's been a lot of, I wonder what would happen if we did this.
Yeah.
And then however that works out, we see either, hey, that was a great idea, or, hey, that wasn't a great idea. It didn't work like we hoped it would. But that's all part of that process of figuring it out and learning the characters, learning the boss, which I really enjoy that aspect of it. I like that there is so much variation in it that it does require that.
Yes.
And so far, we've pretty much solidified our 4 heroes that we want to work through this campaign with. But there are still 16 others that I would love to learn more and figure out, because we've played a couple games where we used other heroes and they just didn't jive with us really well. But I want to go back and I want to revisit those. I want to look at them again and figure out how to best make them work. Like, what is their thing that they're good at? And it does provide hints, especially for your player characters, of what their role, so to speak, is and like what you want to do with them. So it doesn't leave you completely in the dark.
Yeah.
Like,
and it does give you those strategy tips. You can, and it'll tell you, this is what your character does. It doesn't tell you exactly like, you need to be standing here and use this ability, but it's, she does really well when she gets close with pointy things. It kind of gives you that idea. Yeah. And I really like that. It points us in the right direction. And so far we figured out some of them. Yeah. So we've talked about this a lot. We're really excited to have our hands on it. Let's score it. So let's start with value. Our pledge to get this, since we missed the Bad Karmas, which the Bad Karmas core box set was 4 bosses with the original 4 characters. And then they have expansions for 8 more bosses, so 2 expansions, and then the other characters that have come out. Yeah. And we got all of those, right? There is another 2 more expansions that are not Zodiac. They're Lovecraftian, Call of Cthulhu stuff, and 10 more heroes that are out there right now.
Which that Kickstarter just wrapped up, so probably not looking to see those until next year.
But we will.
But we also backed it. So we backed it during the Milan Uprising pledge. So we actually backed in for the Milan Uprising game, and then we were able to add on the whole Bad Karma set.
So we backed Milan to get Bad Karmas. Uprising Milan looks like a lot of fun. Like I said, area control game. And when we break it out and play it, we'll talk about that one as well. But we were shooting for the Bad Karmas, so that's what we went after
first.
Big, yeah. I think our entire box set, which was the Teburu system, which is about $100 is what it looks like. The Bad Karmas core box plus the 2 expansions plus all the characters. And then the Rise of Milan, basically just the core box, is what we got for that. So that entire pledge cost us about $580.
Yep.
That's a big ticket for a lot of stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff with this game. I'm pretty sure it might be close, but I'm pretty sure that this is one of the largest boxes we've ever gotten.
Yeah, it is.
Single box, it is the largest box we've ever gotten. The only thing that might be slightly bigger is our Marvel Zombies pledge. But you have to stack all the boxes together and probably put Galactus next to it. And that's just the Karma's box.
Yeah, I was going to say that doesn't even include the deluxe box that we got for Milan Uprising, which that one was probably about $110. The Teburu is about $100. So you're looking at about
the all-in pledge on the Bad Karmas was about $400.
Yeah, just under, right about there. If you're looking at just the Bad Karma's core box, you're probably looking at about easily $180.
Yeah, I would say to get the Teburu system with it as well.
Yeah. So this is a big ticket item.
Yeah,
when
for
it comes
sure.
to game.
But for what you get out of this, and for the potential for future projects, because I think that's the big thing to think here is that you're buying this one game, and yes, this one game is expensive. There's a lot that comes with this one game, but it is still a high price item. But just getting the Teburu system opens up right now at least one other game. It's got another one on the way, and then who knows what else is out there, especially if this continues to get adopted and grows from there.
The value in it, I think it's really high, like you said, and it's unique. It is unique. I don't think there's anything else out there right now. I've heard some people compare it to some other things out there that were like, you could just do this on a screen. I was like, not the same, dude. It's not the same.
I think when we describe it to people, like a lot of times it's misconstrued of what the experience actually is. But when you sit down at the table and actually get to put your hands on this and play with it and mess with it, and like the first time that boss turns around after you hit him and comes after you, or like moves strategically into a place that like you think in your head, man, it would really be bad if the guy moved there, and then it does. He moves there, yeah. Like I think those are the moments where you go, this is more than just your procedurally generated games.
Yes,
and to me, that is an experience that I have never had replicated. And I feel like we felt this way even after we sat down the first time at Gen Con.
Yeah.
And now it's only been refined and gotten better and all of that. But I think that's the thing about this. It's a unique experience.
Yeah. And
for me, for value in that regards, I'm going to give it an 8 because that price tag is still pretty high. But again, I cannot stress to you all enough. If you ever get a chance to play this game, take that chance. Even if it's just for a quick like 10, 15 minute demo, sit down and see what this game is. Because app games may not be for you, but this experience is something that is definitely unique in the tabletop gaming space.
Yeah, completely agree. 8, maybe even 8.5. Like I've done things with this game that I've never done on other games because of that. So I like that. Components.
So just for starters, I don't think we can really compare the Teburu system because it's so unique.
Yeah.
But if we start looking at the other things, which are mainly your minis,
yes,
which the miniatures are really good. I would put them on par with your larger companies. Coma, Awakened Realms. Like I would put them up there with them. The detail on them is really good. Your maps are just fold out maps, but the detail in the artwork is really good. I like that each Zodiac has its own special pieces that go on the board. I also like that they put out files for you to be able to 3D print.
Yeah, I was going to say
all of the pieces for each Zodiac.
The cardboard pop-outs that you get for the terrain for each one they do the job, they do it well, they look good, but they're cardboard pop-outs.
Yeah.
You go to the website, there are the files, and we have seen some of them online, the 3D printed files of what they actually are. And it took me a second to realize that, that's the 3D print of the little cardboard thing, because obviously they look different. You're getting a real 3-dimensional thing out there. Those look great. And like you said, the minis, the technology notwithstanding, but the fact that all the minis are built with their own RFID chip.
Yeah.
And then even the dice, as that is part of the Teburu system, though, but the dice still they're well done, and they stay connected.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it if we include that as the whole package and we talk about how the components actually function, even though we don't have a comparison of anything else. The fact that those dice work really well, they stay connected to the Teburu board. Like the only connection issues we had were the controllers,
which we were using our own phones running the app. Yeah.
Controllers to the main device.
Yep.
We had no connection issues with dice or with characters or with anything like that.
No.
Again, components wise, I think this is a solid 9.
Yep, easy. I think one drawback that people may have, as I've talked to them about this, is that you do need to have some sort of Wi-Fi device to play this, right?
Yeah.
So if you buy the board game, you do need a device to control it. You only technically need one.
Yeah.
But you do have to supply that, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't come with it. But yeah, I think that's the only drawback that I have from it, really, when we're talking components, because that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So moving into gameplay, for me, it's easy. This is a 10.
Yeah. I haven't found anything negative. I haven't had a feel bad moment. Even when they grab you and they describe your leg breaking as you're beating your other characters being swung around, right?
Yeah.
There are no real feel bad moments, even the ones we've lost. And it's because I think of the way the interactions work. Like, I didn't lose because I rolled bad one time or...
Oh, yeah. It's not one of those games where if you roll a few ones, which we've rolled a lot.
Rolled a lot of ones.
But that's not where you're like, oh, man, if only I would have rolled a higher number, we would have won. It's not... That's usually not the case.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't think it has been ever for us. It's been like, man, we got our asses kicked by that guy. Like... All right, let's run it back.
What did we do wrong?
Yeah,
Don't stand next to him. Or if you are, you be in this stance. You start building that strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah, solid 10.
For me, that's just, again, I think it's such a unique experience that it's something outside of any other board game that I've ever played or any other tabletop game for that matter. Yeah, so easy 10 for me.
Yep. Replayability.
This is one place where there is a lot of content in the box. So I think that level of replayability is there. The one negative that I have to this is going to be replaying the same boss over and over. One, you're going to learn that boss, but you are going to know things like where the secret rocket launcher is.
Because we have verified that the rocket launcher is in the same spot.
Yeah, it does.
Or at least it was twice in a row.
Yeah. So that's the only kick to the replayability aspect, but it's not that negative for me to really like tank the score or anything. But I think I would give this an 8. But there is a lot of just replayability in the box because of the different heroes and the different abilities. And of course, if you get the big box like we did, you got 12 different bosses. You have the campaign, you have skirmish modes. There's also something called the Zodiac Challenge. Don't even know what that is, but it sounds exciting. And we found like there are rewards in the campaign. They give you new abilities. There's unlocks and stuff for every character. So
I really like that in the campaign. Like once you beat a boss, you can pick new abilities to unlock and you get loot.
Yeah.
There's your artifacts and then your like Zodiac like attacks or whatever that you can now do.
Yeah.
From beating that and you distribute them through your party. It's typical party loot stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Which that part of it I really like. So when we go into the next boss now, I'm bringing Ares, whatever we got from him. I can't remember, like his rock butt cheek or something to throw. I can't remember what it was. It's been a while. But
rock butt cheek.
But now I have the advantage.
Action.
Yeah. So yeah, the replayability thing was one thing that I thought about. But again, there's a lot that you get in the box. There's a lot of different ways to play it. How you build your party. You know what? I'm going to build a whole party of just attack guys and see if I could take this thing down.
Yeah.
Like. It reminds me of like Baldur's Gate, the video game, Baldur's Gate 3. We've played through it several times and we've done it differently every time. But I know when I walk over here, I'm going to find this thing.
Yeah. And to be fair, like the rocket launcher is not like game breaking or anything like that. It's a good attack.
It's just fun.
Yeah. But it doesn't one shot the boss or anything. In fact, if you have people standing around him, it also hurts them.
Yeah.
Again, it's not like that breaks it for me. It would be cool if that bounced around a little bit, but I'm not upset that it doesn't.
Yeah.
So I think I'll give this an 8.
Yep.
Just as a baseline on that, because there are a couple elements. I'm sure we'll find more as we continue to play, but just with the just with the amount of heroes, if you get something outside the base box, right? Because the base box is pretty standard, but you still have 4 bosses, so there's that. But if you get the full shebang like we did, there's so much in that box. I don't see us getting through it this year.
Yeah, neither do I. Yeah.
So again, that's where that is. At playtime of about an hour to an hour and a half each run, yeah, it's going to take time.
Yeah.
Yeah, overall, I think overall for me, I think it's a 9.
I agree with that. Easily a 9, just from how unique it is. The gameplay, like we've all talked about, the price tag, you're going to pay for it. It's new technology. Is it outside of the realm of some of the bigger board games that are out there? Like when we talk
Kingdom Death Monster.
Yeah.
Like you'll easily pay that price for a good set of Kingdom Death.
Yeah.
So again, I don't think it's outside of the expected premium price for a premium product.
Yeah.
Because we look at something like Marvel Zombies, where we paid about that same price, probably, actually, I think a touch more. I think we were over 6 with that.
Yeah, we were.
And we got a lot of content for that as well. But still, that experience does not hold a candle to what this does.
Nope.
It's different, and I still love Marvel Zombies, don't get me wrong, but it's a completely different experience.
Yeah.
And again, I have to emphasize, if you, as our listeners, ever get a chance to put your hands on this, take the opportunity.
Yeah.
Especially if you go to the bigger cons. They've been at every larger con now that they can get into, and they always have a demo set up of both Bad Karmas and of Milan Uprising.
Yep.
Just get into them. Usually you have to sign up for a demo because they fill up, but try and get in on a demo just to sit down and play with it and experience it. If you're local to us and one of the people come play with us, by all means,
reach out.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think this game by 100% is a solid 9. Part of me would love to give it more. That price tag is a little bit daunting, I know, for a lot of people. As we said before, tabletop gaming is a luxury hobby.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we are fortunate to be in a place where we can afford to get something like that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I think 9 because of the price. And then again, I definitely think setting up, you need to be a little tech savvy. They don't give you a lot of information even for setup and for figuring it out. Like I said, there is no rule book. It walks you through it, which I like that part. The tech setup part, why is it doing this? You have to go, because it's an app and I'm just going to restart the app and it's fine, kind of thing when you're first getting started. So but still a solid 9. If you can get your hands on this, keep an eye on them. Usually right now, I don't think they have anything out in retail. So it is Kickstarters and late pledges that you're able to use to get this if you're interested.
Yeah, because they're just now getting pledges to backers for Milan Uprising. So I would say probably look at retail probably later this year for parts of Bad Karmas.
Yeah.
But again, they're about to launch their other Kickstarter for Sword and Sorcery, which is going to be their dungeon crawler. I'm excited to see more about that. They have a lot of good stuff coming. I think this game is awesome, and I'm really excited where they take the Teburu next.
And now, our crowdfunding roundup. Hey man, everything can't always be tariffs and kaiju monsters. So we've found 3 projects on the crowdfunding sites to talk to you about that we're hoping that you'll go check out.
Yeah, one of them we actually got a chance to play the original printing of it at Gen Con this past year. It was pretty awesome. The other one, we do have a post-apocalyptic game that hopefully will scratch that steampunk itch for you.
Yeah, because that's not a little close to home right now.
And then lastly, we have a game that uses magnets and a really interesting mechanic that we think you guys may enjoy.
So let's start off with Gudnak. I've had to practice that 4 or 5 times before we recorded, just so you know. And it's coming to us from Chaotic Great. So they've already done the Kickstarter campaign for this.
Yep.
And it was successful. So this is the second printing of the game, and it comes with a lot of extras.
Yeah. This is also the introduction of the first expansion that they have for the game. So that's mainly the reason for this Kickstarter. So we got to try this game out. This is a card-based battler where you have a grid that sits on the table. You pick a faction that you're able to use, and each faction is asymmetrical and does different things. And there are 3 different types of fighters, and it works like rock, paper, scissors, where a certain type of fighter is better than others, but weaker to the other one. A very simple concept. I will say one thing that stuck out to me about it was the artwork was really cool and the factions themselves did feel unique. But one of the things that they talk about that they wanted to bring with this game is that, yes, it's a card game, but no, you don't have to collect anything. Everything is already included in the box.
Right. So we're talking not Magic or Lorcana, where you're constantly getting new cards to build the deck to stay current. This doesn't do that. It gives you everything that you need to play in the box.
Yeah. They do, though, recognize that the appeal of those types of games. So they actually include the ability to get a draftable product of theirs that where you can have little booster packs that you can open up or repack, that sort of thing. So you can do like a drafting version of the game, which I think is really cool because I am a fan of drafting and Magic the Gathering specifically. And there's something about that feel of not knowing what you're going to open and then having that pool that you got to build cards out of. So definitely something very interesting. I'm glad they're thinking along those lines, but at the same time, they didn't want it to be something where you have to spend a ton of money to keep chasing the new deck.
The original box gives you 4 factions to play. There's already pre-constructed starter decks in there. When we played, I think they already had them all set up because it was just a quick demo. But each faction, when you read through them, does play very differently. Their expansion that they have is the Marvoran expansion, and there's another smaller one that I think is on there as well. So it introduces 3 new factions for you to play with, and then the Aruxi expansion gives you 1 more.
Yeah, in total, they have 3 expansions now, counting the newest one that are out for it. So looking at the pledges, that's one of the pledges, of course, you can get the all-in bundle. But if you're looking just to try out the game, you can get the baseline core set, which has the 4 starting factions in it, and it's only going to cost you $40.
Which is worth it for this game. The core set does have a lot of game in it.
Yeah, so if you want to keep going on that, or maybe you already have the core set of this game if you picked it up in the first Kickstarter or at one of the conventions, you can get the new Marvoran expansion. It's also $40. So that adds some more cards, including the 3 newer factions. So it adds just a little bit extra to your gameplay. Then we have the bundle where if you did back the core box previously, this adds not only the Marvoran expansion, but also that booster box like I was talking about in the beginning. So that way you can try the new draft mode, and it also has some Kickstarter exclusives in it. Now that's going to run you about $120.
All right. Next up is their gameplay bundle, which is everything you could ever want and more, so they say. It contains the core set and all 3 of the expansions. That one's going to run you about $140. And then, again, the returning backer collector bundle, you're getting the ability to play the draft, 4 boxes of boosters with that, so you can draft all you want to, plus the new Marvoran expansion, and some neoprene coastal playmats. And that one starts off, that's a 360. Yep. So you've really got to be into drafting.
Yeah, and then lastly, next we have the collector's bundle, which will run you $460, but it includes basically everything from the all-in bundle. So if you don't have any Gudnak, this is a good place to start. It gives you all the base pack. You also get the expansions. You get 4 of the booster boxes to be able to do the drafting. You get the playmat and all the other really fancy upgraded goodies. So like I said, that's going to run you about $460.
Oh, and then if you really want to swing for the fences, there is the legendary bundle. So you get 3 free playmats and an exclusive uncut sheet. You get all of the previous products and apparently endless bragging rights with your exclusive uncut sheet of Gudnak Means War. And apparently you may not recognize yourself after you've backed it at this level. I love the salesmanship. Totally in there. Yeah, that one runs you $13.99.
Yeah. So that's definitely, there have been 6 backers of that.
Yeah.
But if you really believe in this game and you really want to back it, if you got that kind of cash lying around, who are we to tell you not to follow your heart?
That's right. It's just like measuring tequila. Don't worry about the measurement. Pour with your heart. So this game says that they're going to deliver July of 2025. That's right around the corner. They have already funded. They asked for 25,000 and they're at 125. So they're good to go there. 12 days to go as time of recording. So go check it out. Just under 2 weeks. Like I said, the artwork is great. We had a good time with the demo. This is definitely something that I could see us looking at backing.
Yep, for sure. So the next one we have on the list is called Rust and Rebellion by Aether and Alloy Games. This is going to fill your steampunk post-apocalyptic survival niche. This one looks actually interesting. I'll be honest, I was not a huge fan of the art when I first saw it, but the more we kind of look at it, the more it's growing on me a little bit. But this one is a game where you are basically leading a group of survivors in the apocalypse, trying to help them to survive by gathering resources, also by keeping morale up, all those sorts of things that you find in the post-apocalyptic type games. One of the things that I really like about the game is that there are 10 unique apocalypses that you can play through.
I was going to say, what I really like about it is a lot of these post-apocalyptic games are very set in. This is what happened. And this one, you don't know. It's aliens, it's kaiju, it's nuclear war. You pick at the beginning of each game, and that's what you're working to survive.
Yeah, and each of those has its own unique win conditions. It does play 2 to 8, so it does hold kind of larger player groups. It says 45 to 60 minutes on the playtime. Your goal, though, is to just survive.
Yeah.
However you can do that is the goal.
When you look at the apocalypse cards that it shows, they show you how many rounds each of their scenarios goes. So you just got to make it to the end. So again, I think that feels very thematic for a post-apocalyptic game. Yeah, you're not really going to win. You're just going to survive.
Yeah, and the other thing that I like is there are 9 different player mats that are different locations. So this is where your community is trying to survive at. And each of those locations has different aspects to it and things like that really make that part of it unique. So it really ups the replayability when it comes to that.
This one is over on GameFound. So when you go check that out, notice that in GameFound we were talking about they have a featured pledge level that shows up first. So just look at it. If that's the thing you want, great. For this one, it is their Rust and Rebellion Collector's Edition. So it does come with the expansion Fate's Gambit, which they've already gotten out, a neoprene game mat, and Survivor Story Compendium that has advanced apocalypse gameplay and adds leader cards with the abilities. Just a little bump, and that one's going to run you about $100 right now. When you get down to the next one is just the Rust and Rebellion base game. If you're not sure if you need this right now, but you want to try it out, $47 for the base game gives you like 283 cards, 9 player mats, 8 dice, 27 game pieces, all the rule books. So everything you need to play the base game is there, and it's $47. Add the Fate's Gambit expansion on there, and it's going to cost you $55.
And then outside of the retailer pledges, the last one that we have is the Founders Edition, which is a GameFound exclusive. It includes everything the Collector's Edition has, plus you get a themed 20-ounce tumbler, journal, face cards, digital assets, and access to the Discord for early access to future games and expansions. You also get the opportunity to name a leader and help write their story, which is cool. So that pledge level will run you $200.
Which I like that whenever a game or something that's coming out gives you the opportunity to be part of the production, I always think that's fun. I also like, too, that I've seen on GameFound with some other projects that we had looked at, where in some of the higher levels, it's also, and you're going to get first access to any more games that we make. So you're like buying in to that company for a little bit. They are looking at delivery by August of this year. They haven't been funded yet, so they've got 23 days left. They've only got 1,600 out of their requested 30,000. So hopefully we can make a little noise for them, and some people will go check this out, share it. I like the artwork. I think it was pretty cool. It's very steampunk because God knows when the world melts down, the first thing we're all doing is grabbing goggles and top hats. But that's how you survive.
Them's the rules.
Them's the rules. Last up, back on Kickstarter, Magneterra, a fantastic adventure on a magnetic battlefield. coming from Bennett Payne, an independent board game designer. And this is the one that Josh talked about, where the mechanic is collecting magnetic pieces.
Yeah, so the way the Kickstarter describes it is a strategic PvP dungeon crawler blended with thrilling race mechanics for 2 to 4 players, which makes absolutely no sense to you listening to this. But what it basically does is you as a player have this piece that has a magnet on top of it. The game board itself is sectioned off into basically a grid, and there are towers in the grid of varying heights. The towers themselves have that same magnetic piece on top of them. And as you roll the dice and move your character around, as you move close to those towers, if you are tall enough, magnets do magnet things, and they flip off the tower onto your character, which makes it taller, and then you can go after the bigger spires, and that is the goal of the entire game, is to eventually be able to capture the magnet off of the tallest spire on the map. Now, with that, there are also a lot of things happening. You get spell cards and abilities that you can use to attack the other players who are playing. There's also an NPC faction that is running around trying to steal the power magnets off of your character. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. It's a very unique mechanic, though, specifically with the magnets, because it relies on that magnetic force to, when it reaches a certain height, get the magnets off of the...
So in the base box, you get your 4 novice mage warriors and then your master mage warrior figurines, right? You get the pillars to put in, which I think these, for us, having looked at what it costs and what it takes to make a game, I think it's really interesting. Some of the choices they went with, those pillar 3D models, but the board looks pretty impressive. You also get your monsters. You've got walls that you can place. Of course, all of your magnets that you're going to need. Yeah, things look pretty good. I like the custom dice. Those look really interesting that come with them.
Yeah.
Player boards that are like the dual layer. They have the cutouts for you. It looks like it's really well done.
Yeah, it is really interesting the way that it's produced, or what they're hoping to have produced. I think the 3D elements, even though they're a little more pricey, like that's the racing element in this game.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty interesting. I'm not sure exactly how the gameplay goes. There is a video on there, but there's also a few video reviews as well to take a look at that'll show off a little bit more of that. What really just caught my eye was that first glimpse of you watch as he moves the piece close to the tower, and then the magnetic piece on top flips on top of his player. And it's just again, I'm a fan of unique mechanics in board games, and this is something that I've never seen before. And I haven't really seen a lot of games use magnets at all outside of some pretty standard stuff. So this one looks really exciting. If you are interested, definitely go take a look at it. Talking about the pledge levels. So first and foremost, you can pick up the base game. It's going to run you about $89. That's a 30% off of the MSRP, which is supposed to be $127. So that includes everything that you need to play 2 to 4 players, and they're hoping to deliver their rewards by February of next year.
Yeah, on their scrolling down, it said by March 2026, they're expecting to be completely done with fulfillment. The base game, the next one up, they have a deluxe edition, which also gives you metal coins. There's some art and lore game guide for the setting of the world, some 3D art prints, and that one runs $124, which MSRP on it is $175. And then as you continue down, there's actually a 5th character expansion that you can get with the deluxe edition. It runs you $144 right now, but it's all the stuff that comes with the previous editions plus a 5th player expansion.
And then the next one, you can get the complete collection at $159, which includes everything from all the previous tiers, but it adds a monster pack mini expansion. So you get 2 new cards, 6 new treasures, and a new monster coin. And that's the last tier. So a couple different options there for you. If it's something that looks like a game you would be interested in, it looks very interesting. I am curious to learn a little bit more about it. Fortunately, there is 23 days still to go. The project itself has reached its funding goal of $10,000. It's at $36,000 now, so there's still plenty of time to jump on this one if it's something that you think you might be interested in. again, by all means, go take a look at the video and also check out the video review and see what you think. And yeah, maybe you want to add some magnets to your gameplay.
All right. And with that,
rocks shatter, metal cracks, and magma seethes in the cracks of the giant's armor. Ares rears up in the grip of the most furious rage.
the lone survivor of the bad karmas, Fernando the Luchador, wades into the beast with fury unleashed, scoring a hit. The damage doubles due to a special effect that triggered when Fernando took damage.
Ares turns to the hero, steam and lava pouring from his forearm. He uses living mace, grabbing Fernando by the leg and hurling him into the side of Gil's van with a crunch.
Fernando slumps to the ground. The side of the van is crushed, but that should buff out. But for now, the bad karmas have been defeated.
For the Dapper Meeple, I'm Josh.
And I'm Jim.
Good night, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for sticking around and listening to our show.
If you enjoyed it, let me ask you a favor. Follow us and leave a like wherever you get your podcasts. It'll really help us out.
And if you have anything to say back to us, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook by searching for the Dapper Meeple. Or you can email us at dappermeeplegaming@gmail.com.
And as always, we'll save you a seat at the table.